when people talk about something that is a trauma or is uncomfortable, usually the first 2 to 3 times they talk about it, there is some discomfort and even like pain, but after that, it's gone.
Mm,
And I think that a lot of people have the opposite idea where they feel like if they give their attention to something, oh, it'll never end. Like I'll just be this in this state all the time. But it's actually the opposite. Like you'll feel it and then it's done. And it's not talking about it. That's actually the more mentally taxing position because you have to maintain those sort of psychological defenses. Uh, People who do that are giving energy to their psychological defenses all the time rather than just letting it go. Like just feel it once and then you're done. And
mm.
I suspect that you talking about this issue with me now is much easier than the first time you saw the film. And the next time you have a conversation with a client, it's going to be even easier. And eventually you're going to be like me, where you have absolutely no fear of any kind and there is zero discomfort to making other people uncomfortable, and people are shocked by how easy it is to talk about this for you and for the people around you. So
Yeah, I've kind of just started when I talk about things, I'm like, and I know this makes everybody uncomfortable, but and I kind of just make a joke of it now because even when I teach childbirth
but
classes, some
I
of this
would
stuff,
prefer, like, I don't think it does make everyone uncomfortable. I've met people for whom it
the
doesn't
first
make them
time they
uncomfortable.
hear,
The
the first
first
time they
time.
hear, yeah. And a lot of times I'm talking to people where this is the first time they're allowing this to be a topic of conversation, whatever it is, whether it's about something to do with birth or a choice they're making for their child. And I think that it's just hard for some people to, it's like so taboo, I guess, for them to talk about things. But you're right. And now we've actually had in the last like 6 months, I think that there have been three families who I've talked to at prenatal meetings because it's usually mine that we talk about the birth plan, and Samantha has some different stuff on her agenda. But they've come back and decided not to circumcise their sons. There have been
Good.
three that were going to and chose not to. And of course, there are still some that do. But I feel like, I mean, we're making a difference. The tide's slowly changing. And I think that it's impactful for them that I'm honest in saying, I did make that choice for my son and I wouldn't do it again. And because it's not just somebody going around going, well, I didn't do it and you shouldn't either. I think that it kind of helps that I'm honest and just transparent about that.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of the conversations that we are having and the people that are probably listening to this podcast, this really might be their first exposure to conversations about this because, growing up, like you would have no reason if, as a circumcised child, there's really not, or, even man, there's not much of a reason to question that until you get to this point where you have to make that decision. And so this really is, probably the first time that a lot of our listeners are hearing about this kind of other side of things, other than hearing, well, some people do and some people don't. I don't really know why anybody makes those decisions. So I think it's it's important for all of you that are listening to know that this is uncomfortable and that's okay. And just like we've been saying, continuing to have these conversations and talking to people about that can help make things feel better.
Now you all have me thinking about what are the cultural norms around uncomfortable conversations. I think there is an idea that people have that uh, uncomfortable conversations or even conflict in relationships are not good. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
both the research and my own experience indicates the opposite, that if you can resolve conflict or make it through a difficult conversation with someone, you actually have greater connection and intimacy with them afterward. and
I don't
and
think
this
that's the cultural norm here in the States, though.
because people
We
don't know how to
avoid.
have resolution in their relationships because
Mm-hmm.
they're used to conflict being a relationship ending experience.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you can have conflict and make it through that with someone, you're closer to them afterward. It's just that people don't know how to be in conflict with someone while also being in connection with them. And this is something that brings up a lot of conflict for people, not just with other people in their life, but with their own aspects of their personality. So one part of them that has all these beliefs around how they want to be a parent might be in conflict with all these cultural beliefs that they have, or all of the religious beliefs they were given growing up, or all sorts of other aspects of their personality. So people are experiencing internal conflict as well as external conflict, and they don't know how to resolve it. But actually, when you resolve it now, instead of having this sort of taboo that you can't talk about, you have greater trust and intimacy, both with those parts of yourself and with the people around you. So I actually feel like, not even just on this issue, but in general, that's a life skill that people should have. And I think the reason that there's a cultural assumption that's anything other than that is because people aren't taught skills around how to be in conflict or how to stay in connection with someone in the midst of that.
Oh, that's preach. Absolutely. If there's a little applause button, if we had it, I would play it there. And a lot of people, you'll hear so many people say, like, oh, I'm non-confrontational. And because they think that it has to be this big bad thing, and they're really afraid of what outcome is going to be of that. And we have a family right now that had a girl the first time and they didn't even have to think about this choice. And now they're having to think about it. And now they have a couple of nephews who have been circumcised. And then so they feel weird about, well, if we don't do it, then they're going to think that they look different than their cousins. Or I'm like, can't we just teach them and penises look different and vaginas look different, vulvas look different, nobody's looks the same, and who cares? Like, I don't really think they're going to be sitting there staring at it, studying it, you know? And it was funny because the mom was the one that was kind of nervous about having this conversation with extended family because somebody's going to change their baby's diaper and see they chose not to circumcise. And the dad said, we've made different choices than them on everything, vaccines, everything. So who cares? Because maybe we'll teach them something. Maybe they would make a different choice next time because we stood up for what we believed.
That's also taking ownership for other people's reaction. So
Mm.
even if you were to tell your kids, um, we didn't do this because it's genital mutilation and your nephews were mutilated, like, that's the most offensive confrontational way that you could frame that, right? That is maximum confrontation framing. And let's say that the other family is going to be really mad about that. Like, that is not good for them. They chose to do it. Like, why is it my responsibility for for your framing of what you're doing to your children? I actually don't think that is. Now, you might want to say, okay, I make a conscious choice, like, okay, I am going to, uh when I speak to them about this, do it in a way that's gentle, because I don't think they can handle conflict, and I would rather be in a relationship with them than bring something up that could end the relationship. And even though you might have a stronger relationship if you're willing to be in conflict with people, I know they can't handle that. I'm going to choose not to. Like, I understand that choice too. But I want to bring attention to that. That is a choice. Like, you don't have to make that choice. You don't have to be responsible for other people's feelings. Like, you can choose whether or not you want to pick up responsibility for that or not. And so I think a lot of the time, the fears that people have around this are because they're taking ownership of something that isn't theirs. What other
Yeah,
people
you're
do
right.
to their children is not your responsibility. It might be something you have strong feelings about. It might be something you prefer that they did better, but that's actually not something that you have to take ownership of. The one thing you do have to take ownership of is your own children.